with the website, and it is starting now to be productive with the number of people that I'm hearing from, and that means a lot. So make sure that I have your email address if if for some reason I don't have it, because it's going to be important if I'm going to be able to get the updates to you and be in contact with you. So many things have happened since the last time I visited with you that I wanted to try and digest in my own head, whether we be earthquakes or volcanoes or the environment or the economy or 2012 or Emerald or what it is. There is so much, and I've been trying to put these things into proper order, so I could discuss them with you. But one of the things that I thought it would really be something that I should do is to try to answer some of the emails that I get, and spend a few minutes with you on each of these videos discussing the latest information that's coming in, plus exactly what you're saying or what people are writing about. Let me show you where we're at with the number of visitors to the website right now. Right now we're at, well, actually, you know what? We're a little above that. This is 1,495,723. Actually, we're up around 1,496,000. So we're closing in on the 1.5 million mark for sure. Anyhow, I was going over some of the emails, and maybe if we do 2 or 3 each program, it kind of, I think, gives us a chance to think about things other than what's in the current news, and maybe that would be something of interest to you, and I think it would be, because I know it's of interest to me. I got an email from a guy named Philip, and he says, just a quick note. While reading Religion in the Bible and the part about the Bible contradicts itself, I think Paul started the new religion called Simple Judaism, and he threw out a lot of the Old Testament laws, and one of the laws was circumcision. And he said, just like he threw out astrology, and then he says, I think it does contradict itself because it's Paul's new version of Judaism, and that is why Jews are circumcised and Christians are not. That question of circumcision in the Bible it's really well, I approach it differently than people do in religious circles, and I'll tell you why. It comes from a book where you have talking snakes, talking donkeys, oceans open up, people flying up in the sky, and all of this stuff. It comes from a book that is admittedly symbolic. It's mythology. And how do we get to a point where we say, well, okay, this part of it is literal and this part of it is not? I can't do that. To me, the Bible is mythology. And the reason is because there's symbolisms in it. And if there's not symbolisms in it, then fine, I'll take it literally, but that's not the way it is. And so when I hear or somebody raises the question of religious circumcision, inasmuch as the Bible is written by Greek mythologists, then I know that it's talking about something else. It's not talking about the physical body. In Greek mythology, circumcision refers to cutting away the desire of the flesh. Okay? And that's done in deep meditation. When one enters within themselves, separates from the thoughts of the mind, then they're cutting away the desires of the flesh. That's how it happens. That's what it's about. Now, if somebody wants to take this literally and go ahead and do that, well, that's none of my business, and I could care less. But when you're trying to learn something that would really make a difference in your life, really make a difference in the lives of the people who live on this planet, then to understand the mythology that came from these ancient places of light is important. So in other words, what they're saying is, if we cut away our obsession with the material things, if we cut away our obsession with desire, then we get closer to that light. We get closer to that light. We become one with that light. So I don't view anything in the Bible literally, simply because who is there to say what you take literally and what you don't? If you have a book where mythology, where symbolism is mixed in with history, well, then you have to take it all as symbolic. Otherwise, it shouldn't have been that way. Okay, so that's one of the things that I think is interesting when we enable ourselves to look at some of the letters that come in, because it opens up for us some other ideas. Let's go to another one. We have another question here. This is pretty good. It's the question is, and if you want to jump in on these, you can email me at bdona910782000@yahoo.com. But here's the question: what is more important, the heart chakra or the crown chakra, and which has the most metaphysical power? Well, if you're in Christian circles, you don't refer to these as chakras. You refer to them as seals. The 7 seals of the book of Revelation is exactly the same as the 7 chakras of Hinduism. Okay? But here's the deal. Each individual is uniquely different. Inside, you're different than the person next to you. Your mind is different. Your fingerprints are even different. You are a unique person. So when you start talking about things like the 7 seals or the 7 chakras, what you have to understand is one size does not fit all. The particular chakra or seal that might be the weakest spiritual point in a person becomes a negative aspect of that person, and so in that particular individual, it is the most important one. If all of the seals or all of the chakras or all of the spiritual elements of a person are strong, then there's not one that is more important than the other, because one cannot exist without the other. It's like you say, well, which tire on my car is more important? Well, if one goes, they all go. I mean, you can't operate unless they're all moving in harmony. It's the same thing with the question of chakras or seals. They have to be in harmony, and if one is negative, then only meditation can address that and can change that. All right? Pretty good? Not bad. Let me do one more before we get into talking about. I want to talk a little about the volcanoes today. And there's so much more, and something else that's really significant that I think about 2012 that I want to go over with you when we, towards the middle of this. Here's the question is, if there are alien people living on the earth, and the question is, where do they go? Are they still with us, but we cannot see them, or are they in another dimension? And what are the other dimensions, and where is the proof? That's pretty good. I mean, these questions are getting down to the nitty-gritty stuff, But here's the proof. Do aliens exist? Is there proof? Yes. What's the proof? Photons. Photons exist. They have been proven scientifically to exist. And photons outside of bodies live in parallel existences in the subatomic quantum level. But photons are intelligent. Your body is like a car. You drive it. If there's nobody in your car, there's nobody to drive it, it winds up in the junkyard. If there's nobody in your body, there's nobody to drive it, it winds up in a junkyard, which we call a cemetery, or whatever, or they burn them up or whatever they do. They're just stuff. There has to be a photon inside, which is you. You know, sometimes people say, oh, you know, this stuff of reincarnation, and there's so many people and billions of people. How could they all fit in all of these places and all this kind of stuff? Where would they all go and all? You want to get an idea. Change your approach to what a person is, and understand the person as the photon without a body, because the photon will get another body whenever it chooses to. Photon is where the intelligence is. Photon is the intelligence that inputs the computer brain. If you want to get a better idea of, you know, where all the people would fit in, think of them as photons, and then go out at night on a clear night and look at the stars in the sky. And there's millions of them, billions of them, trillions of them. Photons. People. See? Do you understand? So the proof of the existence of aliens, the proof of the existence of us, is that when individual electrons, and everybody has electrons because they are atoms. We are atoms, so we have electrons. When individual electrons become excited within a human being, within your body, or I'm sure an alien being, those electrons can then absorb external photons and undergo a change. So in other words, there is what you call a spirit trying to communicate with you. Well, it's not a spirit, it's a photon. There was no such thing as spirit, there's photon. So how do you respond to that spirit? How do you respond to what you call God or Jesus or whatever you want to call it? How do you respond? By meditating, you stimulate the pineal gland, you excite the electrons, and the electrons then absorb the photon, which is that alien or that spirit or God or angel, whatever you want to call it. That's how it works. That which was three-dimensional, which you are now, but ceases to operate in 3 dimensions, which will happen when you as a photon move back into the quantum realm and find another body. That's what happened. The photon which is in the body, the photon which is in the alien, moves into the quantum realm and the subatomic realm where it dwells. And the proof, now where the person said in the letter, where is the proof? The proof of the existence of the quantum realm has been provided by science going back to Albert Einstein and beyond. So, you know, there it is. And I think it's interesting. I really want to be with you and kind of go over these things as we do these videos. And if you want to write, you have a question, we can address that too. And if you'd like to spend more time doing that, yeah, then we can do that. That's not a problem. You know, one of the things I wanted to bring up, because I just put on the website. I don't know when you're reading this, but on the Hidden Meaning special updates, which go to the contributors, I alerted them to the fact that on the website today, I put a news report from MSNBC, and it had to do with damage to ocean life and to the things in the ocean from acidity. In other words, the scientists say that the acidic oceans are worsening. And that was on April the 22nd. They put this report out on MSNBC. And you know what they say? See, you always have a lot of people, arguing, oh, well, I don't think man contributes to global warming or climate change. These are all natural things and so forth and on. But the scientists in this report, and you can find it on the website, say that man-made emissions of carbon dioxide are making our oceans more acidic and thus threatening coral and the shellfish. And you know what they say? They say that the threat to fish and the ocean is at a rate unseen in at least 800,000 years. Wow. And that panel sent this report to the National Research Council and Congress. The report was written by Brian Gaylord, a biological oceanographer at the Bodalga Marine Laboratory at the University of California at Davis. And you know what they did? But anyhow, let me just read this and show you what he said. He said, ocean acidification is a growing global problem that will intensify with continued CO2 emissions and has the potential to change marine ecosystems and affect benefits to society. And then they did something that's pretty interesting. They tested oysters. Now, I'm not an oyster fan, but I know a lot of people are. But they did a test on oysters because what this guy said was that even with small changes in acidity, seawater becomes corrosive to the shells of marine organisms. And it says that worldwide, oysters have already been impacted by development along coastlines, and 85% of shellfish reefs have been lost. Oysters have gone extinct in many areas, he said, especially in North America, Australia, and Europe, said David Garrison, director of the National Science Foundation's Biological Oceanography Program. Now, what are these? These aren't politicians. They're not trying to get elected to anything. They're just telling you the truth. And yet you've got people who are so concerned that their profit line might be cut a percentage that they scream about this stuff, you see. And the thing that gets me more than anything is that now this should put an end to all of that stuff of the humans contribute to it. I mean, and you can go on the website or go on MSNBC and read this for yourself. But a guy back in 600 AD said this is exactly what was going to happen. Exactly what was going to happen. I don't know if you remember, this is Pakhel Votan who made that prediction about December 21st, 2012. Pakhel Votan knew that humanity would become disconnected from the laws of the natural world and would fall ignorant of our sacred interdependence with nature. He foretold of our accelerated technological society and the resulting damage of our collective diversions from natural law in exchange for materialist values. You might say, well, how the heck does he know? Some guy out in the jungle. No, he wasn't a guy out in the jungle. He wasn't a Mayan. He wasn't a native. He wasn't, sitting around a campfire somewhere. Pakhel Votan was part of the Emerald landing force that landed about 26,000 years ago before Egypt. And what he brought with him was knowledge gained from alien experience in other galaxies, in other universes, things that they knew from experience. And so they could say, well, about how long will it take for the people on the Earth to really start screwing things up and become a threat to the universe as well as the planet and themselves? Well, roughly about 26,000 years, which comes out to about December 21st, 2012. And that's how they knew. It's so silly because people will say, well, how is it possible that some Mayan native knew this? And I would agree that's a stretch. But he wasn't a Mayan native. This guy was a commander of a UFO detachment that flew off from the group that landed in Egypt, and he's the one that said it. He knew, and he knew because of the experience that these people had seen in other universes, in other galaxies, that with about 26,000 years of evolvement and creativity, human beings become a threat to themselves, to the planet they're on, and to the universe. And so here we see this report from the National, the Oceanographic Laboratories, a Marine Laboratory, University of California, saying that we are damaging life in the ocean at a rate unseen in 800,000 years. Ocean acidification. And you'll still get politicians who are, in the bag with some corporation. Well, I don't know if I believe that. Because the corporation can't deal with having to be respectful of nature, of the environment, because it might impact their operating cash flow 1%. The other thing that I've been doing on the website is posting information about that volcano in Iceland. And once again, that goes back to what Pakel Votan spoke of when he talked about the great shaking in December 21st, 2012. You got this stuff happening right before your eyes. It's not something where, you have to read a book about it or go and decide whether you have faith or you want to believe a politician. This stuff is happening. I mean, you see the earthquakes. You got this volcano. Now, it's not that there was never a volcano before. I mean, volcanoes have been blown off, and a lot worse than this one. Earthquakes have been going forever, and a lot worse than some of the ones. But there's so many. And the volcanoes and all of this coming at a time when the economy collapses in front of us. You got a black guy elected president of the United States with a Muslim name. I mean, wild, crazy, unimaginable things are happening. So let's just think, the volcano in Alaska is kind of slowing down. But it had an impact on the economy, didn't it? It sure did. It impacted the economy big time. And the point is that science now says that there is another volcano next to this one, which is called Katla, K-A-T-L-A. And it's not a question of if that one will blow, it's a question of when. And when that one blows, according to the scientists, it will be 100 times worse than the one that blew in April. So let's go back and take a look at 2012. Very quickly, because I know you've been through a lot of this stuff. But let's look again at Pakel Votan and what he said. He knew, that humanity would be disconnected from the laws of the natural world, and he foretold this technological society that would wind up causing damage to the earth and to the environment in exchange for materialist values. In other words, in exchange for profit. He knew it. And he said it. And I told you, and he wasn't a Mayan. He was an alien. Oh, come on, alien. You know what? The one, you read the Bible and you read a lot of these stories and they call them gods and angels. Nowadays we call them aliens. That's what they were then. Okay, they were pretty safe to come down here because they didn't have people running around with AK-47s and all this kind of stuff. So they came, they tried to help us out, like everybody else, and we couldn't tolerate them. They get in front of our need to industrialize. But it wasn't just Pakel Votan that predicted there would be serious problems. Buddha also predicted that there would be serious problems. And I put together a little slide here, and it shows you Pakel Votan and Buddha side by side. And on the left there it says, in the latter day of the law, people lose their desire for enlightenment altogether and are increasingly at the mercy of their greed, anger, and stupidity, the three poisons. And then next to that, Pakel Votan, he foretold of our accelerated technological society and the resulting damage of our collective divergence from natural law in exchange for materialist values. Greed, anger, and stupidity, and moving away from our interdependence with nature in exchange for materialist values. And so, and that's what happened. That's what's happening. Everywhere you look. Of course, Al Gore takes a lot of heat because, he's a Democrat, so that means all the Republicans. He's a liberal, so the conservative. But forget that stuff. You are given this beautiful planet Earth to be your home. And we're wrecking it. And we're seeing it all over the world, and scientists have been warning us of these shakings. I read one not too long ago. They said, the Earth is more active than it has been in a long, long time. So the prediction was that nature was going to intervene. And that's what we're seeing. Because of the violence against it. Oh, so you might say, and we'll get to it later, but you might say, well, volcano, what the heck's that got to do with any of this stuff? Because the scientists up in Alaska are saying that global warming caused the ice to melt on top of this mountain, freeing this energy that was boiling up below it and blowing the lid off of everything. They say it was a direct relationship to melting ice. So we've been told over and over about climate change, global warming, and the part that industrialization and the pouring of toxins, CO2, into the atmosphere plays in it. And just a little while ago, I read to you what you can find on the Hidden Meanings website now, and that is from the people in California, University of California, talking about ocean acidification coming from CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. So we've been through a lot over the last 100 years, couple hundred years. And in our time, we've seen the Soviet Union collapse. We've seen the World Trade Center come crashing down. I mean, impossible thing. We've watched glaciers melt away, the bees disappear, the economy collapsed, and all of this stuff. And we've been warned, in addition to that, by scientists at a very prestigious place, Johns Hopkins University, about factory farming and the fact that our torturing of animals, slaughter animals, for the sake of profit, is posing a serious life-threatening threat against all of us. Look, some studies cited in the Johns Hopkins article suggest that methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the staph infection that caused near apocalyptic warnings across the nation in the last couple of years, may come from the farm, not from the hospital, as widely believed. Another Johns Hopkins researcher, Kellogg Schwab, said he's more than just concerned. This development of drug resistance scares the hell out of me. He asserts that the level of danger has yet to be widely acknowledged. It's not appreciated, he said, until it's your mother or your son or you trying to fight off an infection that will not go away because the last mechanism to fight it has been usurped by someone putting it into a pig or a chicken. Antibiotics. We'll do anything for a buck. And it just doesn't seem to make any difference to these people as to how much damage they cause to everything. We've abused nature to the point where nature is turning against us, and that's what's called the omega point, the 0 point. I went through with that in detail in our last report, where the human mind creates at such a rapid rate that the creations begin to run the creator. We've industrialized at such a rate that we've completely abandoned our respect for nature. And the damage we have caused makes it necessary now for nature to react. Our knowledge has run away from our wisdom. And now nature decrees that it's time to allow wisdom to catch up. And that's what 2012 is all about. Physicist Paul Davies, and I told you about Paul Davies, and you can get his books, and I mean he's really interesting guy and quite I think easy to read and to understand. But he dramatically described to us the problem of our own making and why the universe is in the process of a course correction, whether we like it or not. Let's go back and look at what Paul Davies said. New physics gives a curious slant. Given enough energy and resources, it is within the power of human beings to make a black hole. At the center of the black hole is singularity, space and time. So even we can create and destroy space-time. And he asked, does that make us God? Could it be that the universe is the way it is because it is an inevitable consequence of logical necessity? Jean d'Alembert wrote, the entire creation would appear as a unique truth and necessity. If the universe is slowly choked to death by its own entropy, would God die too? Only a universe of cyclic varieties would appear to allow God to be infinite and eternal. And that's what we're playing with. You know, we're playing with nature in a way that all we care about is the bottom line. But the point that Davies was making is that since God cannot die, the universe has to act to stop this mad rush of humans who have evolved to the point of being able to create through knowledge without wisdom, which results in damaging the air, damaging the earth, damaging the animals, and now, as we've heard today, damaging the ocean. That's 2012. That's the omega point where nature is ordained to stop the onslaught. That is the omega point. The point of singularity. Hey, remember last time I was talking to you about Terence McKenna, and that he developed a mathematical program to show when the omega point would happen, and he worked it out to be December the 22nd, 2012, never knowing that the Pockels-Votan prediction for the 0 point was December 21st, 2012, a day ahead. Let's just real quick look at Terence McKenna's thing again. Just for a minute. Terence McKenna developed a mathematical function he called time wave to show new forms coming into existence. He showed how its shape repeats itself. but over shorter and shorter intervals. The curve shows a surge around 500 BC. That's when we had Plato, Buddha, and Lao Tzu. A major influence was being exerted. And then the same pattern appeared in the 60s, but 64 times faster. In 2012, the pattern repeats again, but 64 times faster. McKenna's precise date for time wave 0 was December 22nd, 2012, and that time he didn't know of the Mayan calendar ending 1 day earlier. And then Terence McKenna passed away in the year 2000. So he used mathematics to figure the 0 point or the omega point, and brought it down to December the 22nd, 2012. And then finally, on this one subject, there was the comments of Peter Russell from the book The Mystery of 2012. And what he said, and we went over this, but what he said was that the great shaking we're going through leading up to December 21, 2012 is the dawning of the wisdom age, the time when nature has to save itself from us. Hey, before we look at Peter Russell, let me just once again remind you, I need your help. Hidden Meanings, P.O. Box 569, Forked River, New Jersey, 08731. The website, www.hiddenmeanings.com. And my email, bdona910782000 So let's go on and look at Peter Russell again. And it will just be one slide, but I just want to refresh your memory as to what he had to say. We are half awake as to what and who we really are. We believe that if we just get the right things, we'll be happy. This is the ute of human greed. Remember now what you remember a minute ago what the Paco Votan and Buddha said about greed and anger and all of this kind of stuff? And here Peter Russell is basically saying the same thing. Look again, this is the root of human greed. Money and our need to control events and other people. This thinking is also at the heart of the ways we mistreat and abuse our planetary home. Our crisis is now a crisis of consciousness. Great technological power, but we're only half awake. To awaken is not to know in an ordinary sense, but to experience the peace and ease that lie at our core. And this is what we're doing, you know. And it goes right back to this thing of greed. Let me go back to Peter Russell for just another statement he makes. He says, because each new phase takes place in a fraction of the time of the previous, we can expect the dawning of the wisdom age to take place in years rather than decades. Humanity will relate to the world in a wiser, more compassionate way. We can only guess how the marriage of technology and wisdom will play out. We have not been there before. Then comes the omega point. And that's what we're facing. That's what we're living in. But you know, for those who don't turn into this direction. And look, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, I'm telling you all this stuff. I'm not telling you anything. I'm simply taking what others have said, taking what others have written, taking what science is giving, and I'm sharing it with you. And the problem is that because we will not allow wisdom to dictate our need to create in a harmony with nature and its living things, nature has to stop the human progress so that wisdom is allowed to catch up. So now we have what? The Icelandic volcanoes. Oh yeah, there she blows. We have the Icelandic volcanoes, and this is the report about it. A violent volcanic eruption in Iceland spewed clouds of ash into the air for a second day Thursday, blanketing large parts of the Nordic country in the potentially toxic dust and disrupting air traffic across northern Europe. This is an explosive eruption. That means there's lots of volcanic ash. Volcanologist Arman Högstason of the University of Iceland told the press. The situation is critical, he said, pointing to a massive flooding and the danger of ash poisoning for animals in the surrounding area. You know, and of course, we knew it has had a devastating effect on air travel, and of course, it had a devastating effect on the economy. It shut down so many businesses that were dependent on tourism and so forth. But the NBC News, put out a scenario as to what could possibly happen for, and the reason I'm bringing it up, not because, I know that the one volcano is calming down, but I want you to keep that word Katla in mind, K-A-T-L-A. That's the volcano right next to this one, which according to science, when it goes, not if it goes, will be 100 times worse. Let's look at that scenario from NBC. London, the economic impact of air travel disruption from a volcanic cloud over Europe depends almost entirely on how long it lasts, something even experts say they cannot predict. If the cloud continues, there will be little airlines could do. The threat of a renewed shutdown might deter both business and leisure travelers from booking flights and hotels, hitting the industry even if the cloud itself never returns. Let's go on to the next one. There is another statement here that I wanted also to show you. Here we go. If the cloud remains stubbornly over Europe for a sustained period of time, perhaps weeks or longer, the travel sector would take a serious hit. Wider industries would also be affected, from high-tech manufacturing to supermarkets and event organizers. Now, that didn't happen at this first one, but there's going to be others, and they know that because the entire center of the earth is shaking. And science has said that. So the point here is that it's not just airlines, high-tech manufacturing, supermarkets, all kinds of things to be impacted by this. And if we go on, it says, this would be devastating news for the airline sector, driving some of the weakest operators to the wall. Overall, European growth might be affected, slowing the recovery from recession, and already heavily indebted governments would struggle to find the funds for support programs. Europe might lag further behind the rest of the world in the global recovery. And you know what's interesting? Sometimes you wonder, we have been unable to put an end to war in spite of all of the folk songs and all of the hopes and prayers of so many peaceful people. We couldn't do it, mainly because of religion and governments, and they like to fight with one another to prove themselves. But here's something very interesting. And this is just the beginning as we get near 2012. This is just the beginning of what you're saying or what you're going to say. Human beings have not been able to put an end to war, and that's true. But look at this. Western military supply flights to Afghanistan would be heavily affected. Western Europe troop contributors would become entirely dependent on the United States for supplies and medical evacuation flights. U.S. forces would also be heavily affected if they could no longer use their logistics and medical center in Ramstein, Germany. So you see, a violent action of nature affecting industry, just as was predicted by Terence McKenna, the Omega Point, as well as Peter Russell and Paul Davies and all the rest of the scientists, and of course Paul Volta, the alien who said it was going to happen long ago. Right before your eyes, you're seeing industry being brought to a halt by nature. But can this be connected to 2012 in Paul Wotan's prediction that our obsession with materialism would cause the great shaking? How do we connect that? I mean, there has to be a connection between the Iceland volcano, which is negatively impacting the economy and human activity. Well, let's take a look at a report from Reuters News and see if we make a connection between the volcano, the disruption of the economy, Paul Wotan, and the Omega Point. This is by Alistair Doyle, environment correspondent, Oslo, Reuters News. A thaw of Iceland's ice caps in coming decades caused by climate change may trigger more volcanic eruptions by removing a vast weight and freeing magma from deep below ground, scientists said on Friday. Global warming melts ice, and this can influence magmatic systems, he told Reuters. The end of the Ice Age 10,000 years ago coincided with a surge in volcanic activity in Iceland, apparently because huge ice caps thinned and the land rose. You see what's happening? So here we are with scientists telling us that CO2 is not only affecting the atmosphere, but as I showed you earlier, and you can go on www.hiddenmeanings.com and see that it's affecting the ocean. In other words, global warming suddenly appearing in the reports on the Iceland volcano because of the effect it has in what is called the magmatic system. The word magmatic, M-A-G-M-A-T-I-C, refers to geology and is referring to the molten rock material under the Earth's crust. So let's go, I want to go back to the University of Leeds in London and then University of Iceland for a couple of more reports about this, connecting global warming, CO2, and industry pollutants into the atmosphere with this volcano eruptions that we've seen. Okay, here we go. Carolina Paglia, geophysicist at the University of Leeds in England, said there were risks that climate change could also trigger volcanic eruptions or earthquakes in places such as Mount Erebus in Antarctica, the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, or Patagonia in South America. Freystein Sigmundsson, volcanologist at the University of Iceland, said that monitoring of the Vatnajökull volcano since 2008 suggested the 2008 estimates for magma generation was probably a minimum estimate. It could be somewhat larger. Could be somewhat larger. Climate change could trigger volcanic eruptions and earthquakes in different parts of the world. And what would happen to the economy then? You see how we're starting to see a connection of nature actually slowing down human activity? Cool it, allow wisdom to catch up, regain your interconnectedness with nature before you wreck the whole thing. Let's go back to the University of Iceland. He said that melting ice seemed the main way in which climate change, blamed mainly on use of fossil fuels, could have knock-on effects on geology. The UN Climate Panel says that global warming will cause more floods, droughts, and rising seas. From the Associated Press, it says aviation experts say the volcanic plume has caused the worst travel disruption Europe and the world has ever seen. So here you are. This volcano expert from Iceland is saying that climate change, blamed mainly on the use of fossil fuels, could affect geology under the earth. And then earlier, I showed you the report that just came out today as I was sitting here, that scientists are talking about man-made emissions of carbon dioxide having a negative effect on the ocean at a rate unseen in 800,000 years. It's happening right in front of your eyes. Exactly what Pakhal Votan said, exactly what Buddha said, exactly what the scientists said when they said that this would culminate December 21st, 2012. In other words, it's not going to happen on December 21st, 2012. It's going to happen now up until that point. It's going to get worse. You're going to see more of this activity until finally it shuts down the industrialization and this greed factor in human beings until we get back to nature and start once again respecting nature. I attached that Associated Press comment that this volcano has caused the worst disruption the world has ever seen. So if global warming has been stimulated by the pollution of the atmosphere by man, like Pakhal Votan said, and if the ice melting in Iceland is connected, then the impact on the world's economy currently being felt is directly attached to the warning that came from Pakhal Votan about December the 21st, 2012. I got a few more minutes. I want to put something else in your mind, and it hasn't happened yet. So, you know, it's like some of the other things, and 2012 hasn't happened yet. But the particular volcano which has been erupting is the small one in Iceland. Another volcano 8 miles away can explode, and according to scientists, it's not whether it will, it's when, from the vibration of this particular volcano, and that volcano is said to be 100 times more violent. I'm going to show you an Associated Press report from Reykjavik, Iceland, and let's read it together. Reykjavik, Iceland. Blasts of lava and ash shot out of a volcano in southern Iceland on Monday, and small tremors rocked the ground. A surge in activity that raised fears of a larger explosion at the nearby Katla volcano. Scientists say history has proven that when a geological volcano erupts, Katla follows. The only question is how soon. And Katla, located under the massive Markarfljót ice cap, threatens disastrous flooding and explosive blasts when it blows. You want to keep that word Katla in your mind. If that blows, it will be hundreds of times worse than the one that is upsetting the economy now. And according to science, it's not a question of if it blows, it's a question of when it blows. Like earthquakes, let's go back. Let me go back to this report. Like earthquakes, predicting the timing of volcanic eruptions is an imprecise science. An eruption at the Katla volcano could be disastrous, however, both for Iceland and other nations. Iceland's Laki volcano erupted in 1783, freeing gases that turned into smog. The smog floated across the jet stream, changing weather patterns. Many died from gas poisoning in the British Isles. Crop production fell in Western Europe, and famine spread. Let me just take you to the next one. The winter of 1784 was also one of the longest and coldest on record in North America. New England reported a record stretch of below zero temperatures. New Jersey reported record snow accumulation. The Mississippi River reportedly froze in New Orleans. These are Hollywood sort of scenarios, but possible, said Colin McPherson, geologist at the University of Durham. As the melt rises, it is like taking a cork out of a champagne bottle. You know why? Do you know why I wanted to share this with you? And to me, it was so important, is because of the fact that it says that New Jersey reported record snow accumulation back in 1784. Now, I've lived in New Jersey all of my life. The Iceland volcanoes are going off again. And I can tell you here in 2010, I have never, ever experienced the amount of snow that has fallen in New Jersey as it has this year. So, you know, that's really interesting to me. You know, New Jersey reported record snow accumulation, and New Jersey also reported record snow accumulations this year, and this year, again, the volcanoes are starting to erupt in Iceland. What can you do? What you can do and what you have to do is regain your instinct. Wild animals have that instinct connection with God. So they know when something's going to happen, they get out of the way. You don't find wild animals getting killed by this stuff because they know it's coming in advance. You don't. Because we have turned away from nature. We have turned away from our inner selves. Your meditation will restore your natural instinct so that you will know in advance and you will get out of the way. You will be saved in that way. I'm going to explain that more to you the next time I see you. Listen, don't forget, I can't keep sending you. I'm not going to send you any more tapes unless you help. And we all got to help together to keep this going. So I'm going to need you to do that. Okay? You'll find an envelope in with the video and so forth, and help out whatever you can do. And then get on the internet, and if you become a supporter, I'll put you on the update list and get you information right away, and you'll be able to see the newsletters and new information that's popping up before anybody else does. Let me give you the address again. Hidden Meanings, Post Office Box 569, Forked River, New Jersey 08731. And the website www.hiddenmeanings.com, and my email bdona910782000@yahoo.com. Okay, I think we had a pretty good time today. Pretty good time. The website is now picking up to a point where I feel justified, in closing the building and being able to spend more time with you and with all the other people who are involved, and I mean, in from all over the world. It's a great opportunity to share this information. So thanks once again, and I'll be back to you shortly. Bye-bye now.